Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan, Leafs Panthers tonight on TSN 4. Mike Johnson will have the call. Johnny will join us here in a few moments. Get his take on what to expect out of not only the Leafs, but the Panthers tonight after what was a pretty fun game in Ottawa last night. The score being completely irrelevant. Panthers beat up on Ottawa 5-0, but
there was a bizarre.
Was crazy.
The offside call I found kind of bizarre.
Yeah. Well,
do you guys have any intel
you have to
on
challenge
what you thought?
that. You have to challenge that. I thought it was offside.
Well, does it matter in the end?
It doesn't, but it was just a bizarre call. That doesn't go your way, and then you're getting a penalty, and it was like that. That's when I knew the game was going to be a mess.
That changed the game right there. It was 1-0 at that play, and then you challenge that call. And you don't get it. It's the Makar rule, which that wasn't the Makar rule. It was very close, whatever. But then you give up a power play goal right after. It was curtains right after that call because it was 3-0.
Right. It is. I think it's appropriate that I guess you penalize if so. But the whole thing to me is kind of goofy.
Now you hate it.
Well, it's again because then what you're doing is you're saying if you get it wrong, like if you're wasting our time, we're going to penalize you for it. So, the league is admitting we don't want to waste people's time. Then why do you do it to begin with? And you got a scenario like that last night where you're looking at all these different angles, and you're like, it could be, maybe it's not. I don't know. And, that I guess goes into the strategy of whether or not you're going to do it. But, again, if you feel like you can get a goal called back, if you feel like it's offside, you probably have to challenge.
Yeah.
But then again, you go on the kill, and if you give one up, it's like a double whammy. You're screwed.
It was.
That
ended
totally
the game.
Screwed.
Yes. That ended the game for them right there. But for me, you're right, Brian. It was a 4.5 minute challenge. That's what it took them 4.5 minutes to replay that, go over it several times. Kills any type of mojo or anything you've got going. Korpisalo had just made that unreal save, you're feeling it. So, and then he gives up.
He was snapping last night, Korpisalo.
Well, it was a bad goal that he gave up to Reinhart. That's the one they challenged, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there was a play behind the net where he was like, "Any interest in coming to get this puck, fellas?"
It's like a JT Miller.
It was.
Vibe. He was not happy with how slow they were to get back into their own zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I don't know, man. It's a weird start in Ottawa. You got the Pinto news, you got the Dorian. Now they're, the Fire DJ stuff. Now they're 8-9, and it's just it doesn't feel like they're going to get up off the mat. Where you look at Edmonton, it feels like tonight's a big one. They got Vegas tonight. This is a big one tonight. It's one thing to beat Washington, another thing to beat Anaheim. You beat Vegas tonight, and Matt McDavid's got 2 or 3 points. Draisaitl's flying. Skinner plays well again. That'll put people on notice. People will be like, all right, I think there's a chance these guys are coming alive now.
Yeah.
But
Jesus is starting to fire the engine.
All of a sudden, he's on the first page of the points list.
Dude, all it takes is 2 games for him. 4 points one game, 3 the next, and it's like McJesus is cooking.
Well, what did
he had 9 in 2 games.
9?
Yeah, you shortchanged him by suggesting he only had 7.
Yeah.
He had 9 in 2 games and skyrocketed up the list.
Isn't Draisaitl 9th in the league?
Yeah, he's top 10, I believe.
Yeah, it's
I said,
crazy.
You guys might not agree, but I said McJesus will be leading the league by January 1 for fun.
It's tough to argue against it.
It's for fun.
I think he's 10 points back at Kucherov.
I know. And all these goons on Twitter, they're like, not a chance. Have you been watching? And I'm like, okay, just pay attention.
Well, his reputation is warranted. He deserves to have the reputation of being a freak because that's what he's been throughout his career.
Yes.
It's not shocking if the guy, puts 50 points up in the next 20 games. That. Yeah. Why would that be shocking to people? He's more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, we saw it last year.
Yeah,
legitimately.
Exactly.
Literally.
I think what the slow start did was it put an end to 150 points or whatever. It put an end to 65 goals, but it did not put an end to the Art Ross or the Hart Trophy for that matter. There's still enough time for him to get back in it. There's no question about that. All right, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, he's calling a game tonight on TSN 4, Leafs Panthers. Here's our TSN hockey analyst, Mike Johnson. How you doing, Johnny?
All good. Grinding the traffic. I tell you what, I don't like to complain about the traffic. I probably should be taking the TTC. like Willie Nylander, but the traffic around the arena, terrible at 5 o'clock.
It's awful.
It's so, like, I've been within 4 blocks of the rink for 25 minutes.
It's terrible at 5 o'clock in the morning, Johnny. It's terrible. Downtown Toronto is ridiculous for traffic any time of the day.
I'll take it a step further. I had to go to Niagara Falls on Saturday. Log jam, hour and a quarter to Burlington. I'm like, this is Saturday night.
To get out of the city.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, on a Saturday. I thought Saturdays and Sundays were no traffic, easy zooming. It's nuts.
There's no such thing.
Yeah.
No such thing.
Johnny, what are you expecting to see tonight? Florida Panthers, I said earlier, I think it's the perfect matchup for the Leafs to snap out of this. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree completely. It's like you read my notes. My open is why the Panthers are a good opponent given what Toronto's going through right now. They're trying to find their game. They're trying to find emotion, intensity, consistency. They're playing the team that brings that out in you, that beats you up if you're not ready to sort of battle and compete and be physical. And so the Leafs lost to this team last year as well. A lot of reasons why they should be into this game and be ready to play a good one against a really good team. Because with Florida, you know what you're going to get. You know the style they're going to play. You know where they're going to come out, and they challenge you physically, not in the sense like last night where there's a bit of, shenanigans, tussles, or whatever. They challenge you physically because they hit a lot. They're pressuring up on the ice. They're in your way. They make life miserable. They have a few guys who are chippy, not so much fighters, but just sort of irritants, whether it's Cousins, whether it's Tkachuk, whether it's whoever. And so you got to be ready to play through that, deal with that, push back into that while also playing your game. So I'm with you 100%. I think it's a good matchup. Not it's an easy team to beat, but in that they get your attention and they're going to force you to play well.
What do you expect out of Mitch Marner tonight?
I'm going to expect him, I'm in between, Hazy. It's like part of him wants to simplify, like he's talked about, his playing and trusting, but then part of him will want to be impactful. And when he starts chasing being impactful, I think he almost works against himself where he has the puck too much. He's trying to circle back with he's not sort of playing the same way. We'll see because Bertuzzi and Tavares have really thrived on William Nylander transporting the puck up the ice for them. And so maybe Mitch can sort of take that role on to be the transporter to get it up the ice so that those guys can do some work. Because if he doesn't, and I don't think that line's going to have the puck in the offensive end as much as they did under Nylander because Nylander is so good at that, best guy on the team, at getting the puck into the offensive zone. So I'm of both minds. Like, he want to keep it simple and dumb it down, or he's going to want to do too much, in which case he probably exacerbates the problem of him circling back and playing slower than he wants to.
Johnny, why? I don't understand. The Tavares line with Nylander was playing so well and helping them win games, and you break it up. That I don't get. Mm-hmm. To me, that was option C. It's like, figure it out with Marner and Matthews together. Marner goes on the third line to figure it out, and he can be pouty and do whatever he wants to get out of it. But that was option C, to break up that line.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, because you can always put, Yarncroke up top, keep Willie Nylander's line together, and put him with Domi and Robertson, which is they're not scrubs down there. Like, you get offensive players you get to play with.
I just think, Johnny, sometimes it doesn't matter the caliber of their player. Someone's got to be a little bit uncomfortable going out there where it's not like everything's rosy all the time. And I think people have a real hard time understanding that not everything is rosy all the time in the NHL. It's like sometimes the coach has got to just make you a little bit pissed, a little bit uncomfortable in the proper way.
And how do you break up, again, Brad Treliving, one of the first things he said publicly was, we're not a core four, we're the Maple Leafs. Right. How can you avoid core four, where when they have to play with each other all the time? Like, they can never split them up. Or the only one that does is Nylander for like a shift or two when Keefe is pissed. But it's never happened before.
Right. No, I mean, it's fair. And I think, getting uncomfortable. And, listen, I'm not because it's Mitch, but any of them. Pissing any of them off is not the worst thing in the world. You know what I mean? Lighting a fire, it's not, it doesn't always go your way. You don't always get to play what you want, as much as you want, whatever. It's not the worst thing in the world when things are scuffling a little bit. I get what you're saying, but maybe that's next steps. I think this step, because Nylander went 2 games without scoring, you could convince yourself that it's okay to split them apart because they hadn't been productive the last 2 games, so it's not as big of a deal. It's a stretch, but and you could try to convince yourself of that. And maybe if this doesn't work well, then you go down the road of other options. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense.
Johnny, Joseph Wall getting the start. Any surprise there?
I guess. I mean, Samsonov played last time against Florida was okay. I guess I'm not even sure. Like, they don't have Noodles a 1 or a 2. Like, I don't even know who is supposed to play depending on what's going on. They just sort of they're equals, and whoever plays better in the most recent game or whoever has the most recent rest, they go. I guess Wall they think played better on the weekend, so that's why he gets to start. Okay, I mean I guess there is no real rhyme or reason. Just whoever they think is playing better in the moment, that's the guy who gets to play next.
With Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst. So the GM of the Blackhawks, Kyle Davidson, is speaking right now about this Cory Perry situation. And I'm going to read a couple of quotes here. One, he said, quote, "This does not involve any players or their families, and anyone who suggests otherwise is wildly inaccurate and frankly disgusting," end quote. Those rumors have been flying.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
Good, he should say that.
He has to. Good. He has to come out and say that. And then when he was asked about if there's any criminality involved in this, he said this is a workplace infraction, I guess. I'm paraphrasing here. But in other words, it's nothing illegal, and it doesn't involve any of the players or their families. So we're not going to speculate on what it is, but at some point it will likely get out what happened here with Cory Perry. But he's placed on waivers. They're going to terminate his deal. I mean, what do you make of the way this is all played out, Johnny, and the likelihood that we see Perry play again in the league?
So it depends on what it is,
right?
If it's not criminal, then sure, I suppose. But I guess, I know the Blackhawks have been taking a lot of criticism for how this has played out, and I get that. And I get that the Blackhawks don't get a lot of benefit of the doubt given their most recent history in handling a very serious situation very poorly. And I get that.
Just quickly, Johnny, why didn't Davidson make that simple statement as soon as this was coming about? That would have saved a lot of problems, wouldn't it have?
Well, on the initial day that he was scratched when I was in Chicago on Friday, the rumors about the family stuff, they didn't exist. So there was no real reason. It kind of happened in the vacuum of lack of information. But I'm just going to say it this way. Whatever happened with Cory Perry, and I don't have any idea what it is per se, if it involves someone else, you have to respect that person's privacy, that person's feelings, what they've gone through, whether victim is the right term, but they're part of that equation. And if that means that bad stuff gets said about your organization, they would have to take that hit before they say, this is exactly what happened, this is what it went down, and this is the other person that might be involved in it, or people, or whatever. They would be respecting the other party in the conversation, which they absolutely would have to do, given their history of not being kind, would be a mild way to put it, to the victims of a serious thing.
Yeah. There's no playbook here, right, Noodles? I mean, that's where I was
going to go. There's so many layers to this. If lawyers and HR, if they say workplace, there's so many things that factor in, and it's, to be honest, I know we want the information as the public and that, but we're not owed it yet until they go through their due diligence. That's the thing. I know we live in a world where it's instantaneous information and people get frustrated and they speculate when they don't have it. I'm sure they're trying to sort through it. And, to your point, Johnny, if there's other people involved, you have to respect the other people involved as well. So there's a process. It sounds like they went through it. Now they're coming out of it. They made the decision to terminate his contract and move away from that. But I guarantee you there were layers and layers that they had to sort through before they made that decision today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and layers of lawyers.
Yes.
And the Players Association probably too, right?
Players Association, agents, all of it. The league, the team, HR, whatever else. They all would have a say. And the say would not be, let's give the fans and media what they want. The say would not be, let's help Cory Perry manage a tough situation. It would all be about how do we do what's right by, if there is someone else, whoever else is involved in the situation.
Yeah. And I'm curious when we hear from Perry again. Like, he's one of.
Well, see, Hayes, don't you think it's possible? Like, I without knowing what's going on, but if it's like something relatively serious, we never hear from him again.
Oh, I think that's probably likely to be the case. I mean, the guy's been kind of hanging on for a while. He's still an effective player. He's been a great player. That's the thing. He's been in the league for 20 years. He was in that 03 draft, the famous 03 draft, one of the great junior players of all time.
He was dying for a contract when he finished in Dallas, and Montreal just picked him up as a, let's see what it is.
Basically for free. And then Tampa's like, we'll take you for free. And then Chicago's like, we'll pay you $4 million to be a mentor, and he's out 20 games in.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I mean, this Chicago team, it's been hit after hit after hit. And, this was out of their control in terms of what happened, but they obviously controlled the aftermath. And, when the dust settles, they're still not a very good team. And, it's about Bedard and making sure that they're moving in the right direction. Obviously, that's why they came to this conclusion. But, yeah, I think it's likely we don't see Perry again. But I wouldn't be shocked if he wanted to keep playing. And if he wants to keep playing and it's nothing illegal or he's not going to be suspended for it, I would. That's where it gets sticky with the PA, too. Like,
well,
what do you do now?
If he plays again, we will absolutely know what happened. Because no team could sign him without explaining what happened.
Exactly what happened.
Right. Well, again, this is completely different context because we don't even know what the context is. But you look at the Ime Udoka situation in Boston, like their head coach for the Celtics, where all of a sudden he was gone and everyone's like, what is going on? Then it was like, okay, this is what eventually it came out. He got another job, though. Like, he's in Houston, and they're doing great.
Dude, very quickly he got another job.
Very, very quickly. And, again, I don't know what's happened here with Perry, so it's not the same. It's not apples to apples. But, you're right, Johnny. Information will have to come out if he's going to resume his career. There's no – and he's going to be asked about it. Like, wherever he goes, the next time Cory Perry shows up, it might be at the Hall of Fame. And it'll be like, hey, what happened there? Like, someone's going to get to him, and ask him. It's a wild story. Meanwhile, one of maybe the greatest Blackhawk of all time is now signed in Detroit, and that's Patrick Kane. Yeah. I'm curious what you think he's got in the tank, or how much of an impact are you expecting him to really have on a team that's been truly a positive storyline this year? The Red Wings have been off to a great start.
Yeah, I'm unsure because, he put up decent points last year, but he wasn't, the same sort of impactful Patrick Kane that he had been in previous moments in his career. His pace was off. He got points, but he was kind of a drag on overall team success. So that is, can he skate well enough to get up and down the ice? I like the fact that if I'm Detroit, I like the fact that he wanted to come there, that he's got DeBrincat with a relationship there. And like the Red Wings haven't been good for a long time. People might not remember what it was like when we all played, guys, when they were the place to go. And anyone who could go anywhere was choosing to go play and live in Detroit. And as an organization, that will feel good. And like in the sense that a guy who's a marquee player who could have gone a lot of different places elected to come play and live in Detroit hasn't been that way for the better part of a decade. So that's good news. I would be a little bit leery about his hip, just how well he can skate and play at this pace. But the fact that they only gave him 1 year, I mean, there's not a lot of downside to Detroit bringing in Patrick Kane.
Yeah. I'm curious what he's got, man. I'm curious to see if Detroit can hold on. They got a long run. They got 62 more games.
Yeah,
but
it feels a little premature to call them a guaranteed playoff team.
I think they're getting enough goals. Premature. It's just what they can keep out.
Their power play. Alex Tanguay runs their power play. They're creative. Yeah. They've got an impressive power play. I will say that. Everything else, will sort itself out. I think that Siders, found another step. The goaltending's been good. They've got more depth there. They got one of the things that was said to me about Detroit in even doing their game is they've got NHL players now, where last year, a couple of years, they've had guys that they were trying out type of thing. Now they've got NHL players there. We'll see what they can get to.
Yeah. Well, this Atlantic Division, man, it's stacked.
Yeah.
And it continues tonight. Leafs Panthers on TSN 4. Johnny, have a great call. We'll do it again later in the week.
All right, boys. Have a great night.
Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. I'm seeing Paul Maurice is being asked about Matthews and Marner splitting up, which I'm sure he really wants to talk about publicly.
He will come up with some smart ass remark about that.
Well, he said, this is a Masters tweet. Paul Maurice on the Leafs splitting Matthews and Marner, which he's aware of because you're game planning against him.
But why would you ask the visiting coach that? It's not his players.
I know, but he was the former coach here. It's Toronto. Like I don't know.
That's what they do. They literally, like, something will happen. The Leafs will make a great play, and they'll ask somebody in Arizona about. Did you see what happened in Toronto last night?
I know it happens all the time.
If I was a head coach of another team, I would say I could care less. It's not my players.
Yeah.
I don't comment on other players.
Which a lot of coaches probably would. Paul Maurice, loves being up here. He loves talking. Like Mo's a fan of the attention, I think. And his answer on it was, quote, "That will happen. I don't think it's a major shift. We do it all the time. We got Barkov and Verhaeghe go in and out. One's a 40-goal scorer, one's a Selke winner. We flip it due to staleness just to get something going." Which that's actually a pretty accurate comment there. Yeah, and using a couple guys on his own team. Barkov, did he have 4 assists last night, I think? He's had a great start. Verhaeghe's a stud. Tkachuk's a stud. Florida's they're a serious
got
team,
14
man.
goals.
Reinhardt's top 10 in the league in points.
They are a serious team.
They're a serious team. Yep, they're playing really well. They're stacked with talent. They're tough. They're willing to,
That's what I want to be able to say before Christmas. Say the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're a serious team right now.
Yeah.
And that's what they should be wanting people to say about them.
That should be the expectation. That is the expectation, but it should be what we're witnessing. Is a team that is up for any fight, a team that has a killer instinct, and a team that, not that you're not going to make mistakes or have slumps or lose games. Obviously, that's always going to happen. But you can't consistently through 19 games be a team where you're like, I don't know what they're going to have tonight. Like, I'm not sure if they're going to have it. And when you lose to Chicago, you're like, I'm not surprised. Like, you should always be surprised if you blow a 3-1 lead at Chicago. It should always be a surprise.
Yes. And you look at those standings right there. 23 points ahead of Buffalo at 22.
Yeah.
And Montreal at 20.
They're playing like a middle of the pack team. If you include the overtime and shootout losses, they've won 10 times, they've lost 9 times. A lot of people have pointed out 5 regulation wins, 6 regulation losses in 19 games. And their stats all indicate the same thing. You look at underlying numbers, you look at it all. They're just middle of the pack. Not bottom feeding, not awful by any means, but basically playing like a 10-6-3 team. That's pretty appropriate what they are right now and how they've played.
Yeah.
So
well, they've got an opportunity tonight against a team that back-to-back, it kind of tilts in favor for them if they show up and play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely. Speaking of which, Tiger Woods had his presser today. You see your boy saying he thinks he can play once a month. On tour this year. Once a month.
They asked.
No disrespect to J-Mac. Don't text me, our boss, Jeff McDonald. I'm Tiger pressered out. Like, it's the same one every time. It started out like this. I got no idea what I'm going to bring to the table. I'm very curious as much as you guys. And then he goes, I can win.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, what is it, man? Are you curious or you can win?
Yeah. Do we have the Tiger? You want to hear Tiger?
Go ahead.
Now, here's the thing. All right, close your eyes and pretend this is 2014.
Or 2010.
Or 2010 or 2019 or 2023.
Yeah.
Here's Tiger Woods earlier today.
I love competing. I love playing. I miss being out here with the guys. I miss the camaraderie and the fraternity like atmosphere out here, and the overall banter. But what drives me is I love to compete. There will come a point in time, I haven't come around to it fully yet, that I won't be able to win again. When that day comes, and I'll walk. But now I can walk. I won't say run away, but I'm gonna walk away.
So you being here assumes you think you can still win out here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, there was a time when that guy was like in his primo.
Yeah.
He would make a statement at a press conference, and it would get through the driving range, and everyone would soil their shorts in the range and start skanking balls.
Yeah. This guy's
But that just doesn't happen anymore.
No, they're not scared of Tiger. It's not, and nor should they be. Who knows if he's going to be healthy, what his game's going to look like. But I fall into the trap every time. I'll be watching him play.
Oh,
You'll be sitting there watching him play. I want to see him play this week. I'd watch the Pro-Am. I'd watch him play the Pro-Am every single shot.
Dude, I'll be garbage on OverDrive on Thursday if this guy's on the course because I'll be watching every shot. I'm just warning you right now.
But keep in mind, like
play.
Gretzky, his last year scored 9 goals.
I know.
Like that's that's the thing that eventually it's the wheels fall off, or the player decides, you know what, this isn't for me. Like it's not working. But every time he comes back, it's like you fall back into that trap.
Always.
Until he does the ass grab. Which the limp.
Could happen this weekend, Noodles. The Pro-Am, he might do an ass grab, right? The glutes may not be shooting at the Pro-Am. But I will say...
Dude, if he starts chipping skank balls across the green back and forth, he'll grab the ass cheek and it's game over.
Right. It'll be his ankle. Meanwhile, it's a chip.
Yeah. Or no, it'll just be like a hobble. Like he'll start limping.
Yeah. Just can't
Put him
do
in
it.
a cart. I'm telling you. Put him in a cart.
Dude, if he's 10 over after 4 holes, he's Lieutenant Dan down 9. and he withdraws.
Yes, he will be.
He is Lieutenant Dan down the 9th fairway, and he says, check, please.
Check, please.
Yeah.
I can't do it. My ankle is
He'll
screwed.
stick around until Sunday to hand out the award and the big check.
Joey will have a wheelchair with Lieutenant Dan in it on number 9.
But I don't think LeCava's going to be. He's with Cantley now.
Oh, that's right.
I don't think he announced who his new caddy was. That's how big Tiger Woods is, that people actually wonder who his caddy is. Like no one else cares who hey, who's Morikawa's caddy? Who cares? But Tiger's caddy, got to know that kind of stuff.
There's cash involved in that.
Yeah, big time.
Cachet too, as well.
Absolutely.
Love it.
All right, Leafs Panthers tonight. Panel work tonight. Say hi to everyone over there. I'm seeing JD's putting in serious work. We got an in-studio feed here. He's been sitting at that desk. It feels like it's on a loop, like we're watching Speed. You know the bus scene in Speed where it's the same? He's just been sitting there writing notes for like an hour and a half.
I know. That guy writes. Like he'll have a full document in front of him, but he has to write everything out in his writing and his words.
It's kind of amazing to watch him. Like he's got his suit. Duffy's
How's
just
his hair
crushing
look, though?
It looks phenomenal, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Duffy he's got his A suit on. It's a big game tonight.
He hasn't gone into
different
the
approaches.
yet.
You did a host at a Leaf game. You just wheeled in there and said, "What are we doing?"
What do we got here, boys? Let's fire
go.
up a panel tonight. Yeah, a little bit of a different approach. All right.
I love it.
Say hi to everyone over there. Noodles, you and I sticking around. Got Frank Isola coming up later this afternoon. Raptors, Nets tonight. You heard from LeBron last night. He's not happy. See, the Clippers lost, and Jokic didn't play. Murray didn't play. Aaron Gordon didn't play.
Joke.
Clippers stink, man. The Clippers are a really, really bad team right now. So more on that into hour 3. And again, Leafs Panthers tonight. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Leafs Panthers tonight and Raptors down in Brooklyn playing the Nets tonight. Frank Isola will join us in about a half an hour. Confirm and deny still to come as well. The O-Dog on the panel tonight. I'm looking forward to both games, but like Leafs Panthers, I kind of want the craziness of that Panthers Sens game to carry over to tonight. Because
I think it's going to be the exact opposite.
I think you're probably right. Probably sleepy and just. But again, if you're the Leafs, I don't. That probably suits them more.
It does.
And, they're more comfortable in those type of games. So they probably embrace that. But it kind of goes against what they're trying to fight against a little bit in terms of the reputation. Right, Noodles? Like you'd think they'd be a bit pissed with the way they're playing, with what happened to them in Florida in the past. And, come out with some bite tonight. And if all hell breaks loose, embrace it and still win the hockey game.
Yeah, I mean, you can win different ways. That's why I brought it up at the start of the show today. I felt this played into Toronto's hands because of the way that they play and their top players play. It's like, hey, we want a nice game out here. You don't touch me, we won't touch you, and let's see how this unfolds. And it's a 6-4 game. Like you got the backup goalie, Anthony Stolarz is playing tonight. They played last night. I guarantee you a few of those guys in Florida woke up a little bit sore today because – they were in one, like fighting it out, fought their way out of the third period. And the reputation of the Leafs is like, hey, let's have a nice game here. It's November. Don't touch anybody.
And I guess that's what I'm saying is I'd like to see the Leafs take it upon themselves to say that's not our reputation anymore. Right. I don't expect that to be the case. And I think ultimately what the Leafs' priority is and should be is finding a way to get 2 points tonight. Right, you got to win. You got to win hockey games. You're being challenged here, not only internally, but externally. People are wondering, okay, what do you got? And yet, if it does get carried away, again, it's a silver lining to an extent, but Ottawa lost the game in the end, but at least they did go down with a fight.
Yeah, pushback, right?
There was pushback. And what I found interesting last night, we saw Matthew Tkachuk going to the bench and yelling, Timmy, you're dead. Sanderson, you're dead. And he's talking about Stützle and Sanderson, which kind of reminded me of what happened, remember, last year in the playoffs when Point went down, when Riley and Point got in that kind of engagement, and then Point went into the boards really weird, and all hell broke loose, and there were all those fights. Remember, it was Tampa that was coming over the boards yelling Marner, you're dead. Nylander, you're dead. And we had Wendell in here yesterday. And he's like, that's the way it used to be. If one of our best players got hit, it was we're going after your best player. We're not going after your tough guys.
I was laughing today still where Wendell told us that story where, was it Gino Odjick was acting
Gino
up?
Odjick was chasing Dougie around.
Wendell grabbed Berrier and skated him over to Gino and said, if you continue to act up, this guy's getting it. Like he was a prop.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it was. I can't remember who I was telling today in the league. They were laughing, but that's kind of how things were back then. There's a lot of lip service. There was a lot of lip service last night. That was a throwback. I know not everybody loves that. There were a lot of people that didn't turn that off, and it was a 5-0 game or 4-0.
Never. The biggest hypocrisy is the idea that you turn off stuff like that. It's not – the league can't promote it anymore because of the way the world has changed, the way what we know about, different elements of medicine and medical histories and all that kind of stuff. And I understand why the league has, pushed towards being more about, the beauty of the game, the grace of the game. I think Paul Maurice had a great quote on that last night where he's something along the lines of it's beautiful, it's graceful, but it's also mean, nasty. And that's the sport. That's the nature of the sport. And it's all encapsulating. And that's what makes it so great is if you're in the building, the idea that anything can happen. You could see the most beautiful goal you've ever seen, or you could see a bench-clearing brawl. It is incredibly unique sport. Yeah. There's nothing else like it in the world. Where a guy that can happen last night, and then all those guys fly to Toronto and they play tonight. If there's an 11-on-11 brawl in soccer, they're suspended for a month. And in basketball, you're suspended for 5 games. And you can call it goofy, you can call it ridiculous, and if you're not a fan, that's probably what you're saying.
Matthew Tkachuk was cut by the temple a little. He might have needed a stitch or two. If that was other sports, there would have been a guy with a head wrap, a mummy on.
Probably the mummy in action tonight. And you're right, and they're going tonight, and they'll reset, and if it happens again, it happens again. But I thought that was quite the scene last night, and I'm curious because what will likely happen is the next time Florida and Ottawa play, it'll be a massive buildup, and it will be a big dud. Nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen. Yeah,
but
no, you're right.
The idea that the Tkachuk brothers, because remember the Primo brothers fought.
Yes.
Remember they got in a fight? And I want to say Keith Primo's told the story about when he got off the ice. I think I'm telling this properly. The trainer came up to him and said, hey, there's a phone call for you.
Yeah.
And remember he went to the back and it was his mom snapping. His
mom called the trainer's room going, what the hell are you doing?
What are you doing? And he had to explain why he fought his brother Wayne. I think that would be the number one fight in the NHL. Is Tkachuk on Tkachuk. I don't think it will ever happen. I don't think it'll ever happen. But, man, could you imagine a dust-up between those two at center ice in a playoff game?
Wow.
That would be crazy.
But the thing is Matthew is not in Brady's league physically that way. Brady is 4, 5, 2, and Brady can fight. Matthew is chippy and tough. He's got that toughness to him, but Brady, I think, can be more in the killer mode.
Right.
That he's a big man.
Yes, I agree. And you saw that at the end of when he basically ran over the goalie and just fought 3 guys.
Yeah.
But, remember the Tkachuk and Kassian story where,
that's true.
And eventually Tkachuk was like, this has got to go. It's got to happen. He dropped the glove. I thought he actually, put on a decent fight with Kassian.
He did.
But he was nowhere close to his weight class.
No, he answered the bell, and he's a tough customer. And I liked your point too. Good on Jake Sanderson. Like Jake Sanderson, that's his first fight. Played college, probably has really never had a fight, through it. And why would you? He's a super skilled player. But instead of having Zach McEwen, who did jump Tkachuk on that play or get after him a little bit, instead of having your teammates battle, Jake put his hand up and said, okay, let's go here. And, good on him. But that being said, Ottawa needs to use something to galvanize them, because 8-9, and regardless if you have games in hand, you're chasing the standings. This is when their schedule gets crazy now.
Yeah.
They've had a really nice schedule. They've played, I think, since coming back from Sweden, this is like 2 games. Like they haven't played at all.
Right.
Now in December, it's every second day. So this is going to make or break their season once they start catching up in games. And if you're not putting points in the bank, that's it. They've got to find a way.
Yeah.
So,
that's what we talked about all offseason. Ottawa, they have to have a good start, and they've punted on that. And they had a bunch of home games and soft skeds, and they have not taken advantage. So they've done it again, where Ottawa's got to do, a lot of uphill climbing. And, that's what we've been talking about here with the Leafs. Like, the Leafs they're fine. They're off to a decent start. 10-6-3 is nothing awful about that. But you haven't given yourself a buffer where you look at Boston. Now Boston's lost 3 in a row. They're still not sweating. There's no need to sweat because what they've already accomplished. Florida's banking points. The Rangers have banked points. Colorado, Vegas, L.A., Vancouver. There's a handful of teams in the league that have had such a good start that they've made their lives easier. The Leafs have never made their lives easy in the past, and it appears as if that's not going to happen this year either. So more on that into the next hour. Confirm or deny in about 45 minutes. Frank Isola to tee up Raptors and the Nets, and it looks like Ross Atkins has been speaking this hour with some interesting comments on Bo Bichette, the possibility of pursuing Shohei Ohtani. We'll tell you about that next. All right, so the Blue Jays GM Ross Atkins was speaking to the media here in Toronto today, and was asked a litany of questions, including about the rumors of Bo Bichette. Remember, we said this last hour that The Athletic was reporting that the Jays were getting calls on Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr., which is a report that gets thrown out all the time in every sport, but it just holds absolutely no weight.
Leafs are getting calls on Matthews.
Exactly.
Edmonton's getting calls on McDavid. What are you talking about?
Hey, the Chiefs are getting calls on Mahomes. Oh, really? Wow. That's wild stuff. Does that mean they're going to trade him? I guess they were getting calls. But Atkins was asked about Bo and his future here, and he said, quote, "He's a really good player in a market that doesn't have a great deal of position players. We're very fortunate to have him, and he is our shortstop moving forward. Rumors, speculation, there's always something to that. But in our case, Bo is our shortstop moving forward," end quote. Now, what I find interesting, I don't know what the question was. They might have asked him about playing short in particular. But in the answer, he says multiple times, he is our shortstop moving forward, right? Not a Blue Jay moving forward that has the ability possibly to play third or move to second base or left field or whatever. He's our shortstop moving forward. So, listen, Masai Ujiri at one point was saying, DeMar DeRozan, he's our guy, and that obviously changed. But I don't think there's any reason to believe Atkins is bluffing here. Bichette had a great season. He's their best player right now. Why would you move off him unless something ridiculous is coming back in return? But it's just when asked about Ohtani, this is what people want to know, right? Like, what are you in on Ohtani or not? And I don't think he'd give a clear answer on that out of respect to the agent. That there's always politics in play here. Like, do you want to mess around with a relationship by announcing to the world you're not in on Ohtani, and then
it's not Jimmy Benning either, though.
Right?
We're in on him.
Well, exactly, and the opposite would be being that brash. He's not going to do that. But when he was asked about Ohtani, I guess his answers were somewhat general in nature and somewhat vague. But he did not completely dispel the notion that the Jays could be in on him. He said, quote, "We have an incredible opportunity here. The city, the country, the supportive ownership, the winning environment, the renovations that have occurred. We have incredible opportunities with the economy and the diversity and the strength of this city that is celebrated by a country," end quote. I don't know what that really means.
No.
But I guess he's not saying we're out, and he went on to say, ownership has always been supportive. The money's always been there. They're one of the few markets in baseball that I believe he used the word nimble, can be nimble with their payroll. So I don't know. What do you make of that, Noodles? Are we still dreaming about Shohei Ohtani or what?
I mean, I would say if we had to do a off the cuff, like a little Jerry's, like I'm 6%, but I'm not 0. Like I think they wouldn't be good managers and presidents and whatever, their roles being depending, because they would go all the way up to Rogers if they didn't figure out what or even sniff around and ask how much he's looking for. Would Toronto be on the map? And you got to sniff around. So I say 6-7%, but honest to God, you have to call on him. You have to talk to his representation. And I know we joke that his reps might not even take the call or flush it or whatever. That's not going to be the case.
No.
You ask the agent and say, are we in the mix, and what does this look like financially? And the agent might just throw a ridiculous number and say, well, if he's going to come there, it's this. Okay, we'll get back to you. And they try to work on something. But I guarantee you, they've called probably several times, did some back channeling to see if he would be even interested in coming north of the border.
Yeah. And I would guess they got an answer saying, hey, keep calling, which means he's at least, he hasn't completely shot it down. Because when you're dealing with someone of this caliber that's going to cost this much money, immediately like 20 of the 30 teams are not even calling, right? Like Milwaukee's not calling. Tampa's not calling. You can go down the list of a number of teams. They're not going to pay that kind of money. Or they're not competitive yet, and they don't feel like Ohtani makes sense, or that he's even going to take them seriously. Where the Jays are in a position where they have been a playoff team, or a team that's competing with the playoffs in a 90-plus win team, give or take, for a number of years. It is a major market where the owners have the money.
Right.
Whether they want to spend it or not
different story.
Is a totally different story. But they could absolutely write the check, like without question, and it would not affect their everyday operation at all. But, I was on with Onright last night, and I looked at it like 3 different pillars here, 3 different layers that you got to go through that make it hard for me to believe this is going to happen. The first one is ownership, where they have the money, but the largest contract they've ever signed is $150 million. So now you're going to give a guy $450 million, five. Like, yes, they have a top 10 payroll. They do spend money. They are active in the off seasons. Right? Like every offseason, they spend money, they bring in players. This is not about them being cheap, but there's a difference between spending money and being the Yankees, or being the Mets or the Dodgers.
Yeah, let's get crazy here, though. Let's say Ohtani's camp said, keep calling, okay?
Yes.
So you do have to take calls on Vladdy and Bo, because if you're going to spend 500 sheets on – that means one of them is not getting paid.
Probably
correct?
true. Yeah, probably true that you're not going to hand out like $1 billion in contracts to 3 guys.
Right. So you're probably figuring out, okay, what does the marketplace look like for player X, whether that's Bo or whether that's Vladdy, if we do have a chance at Ohtani. Again, that's not reaching out to everybody going, make us offers. It's trying to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
So, they would have to take calls on those players to see what type of packages other teams would be interested on. That's maybe what we've been making fun of, but maybe that's kind of, another way to look at it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's the chess game of being in management. Is you always have to be considering, like, what if this piece actually goes here? What do we do with that piece?
Yeah.
And that is all a part of the calculation of building a roster. But, there is no downside to the idea of Ohtani playing in any more. Like, if you're a Blue Jay fan, if you ever found a way to talk yourself out of how amazing this would be, I really pity you. Like, I really pity you, because, like, if you're sitting there thinking, well, it might cost you this guy, or what if, what do you do with the rest of the payroll? Who cares? The guy is he may be the greatest player ever, considering what he does.
Right.
Like, this guy mashes like 45 bombs a year and then has like a sub-3 ERA. And I know he just had the arm issue and he's not going to pitch probably this season. But at some point, you're going to go down to the Dome, watch this guy go like 3 for 4, 2 bombs, and strike out like 8 guys.
I know.
And you're going to talk yourself out of that? I mean, it would be the most incredible signing I could ever possibly think of. Like, it would change the whole landscape of the Blue Jays and the Canadian sports scene.
Well, they might have a focus group going, if we spend $500 million on this guy, how much are we getting back? What does our merchandising look like for every, because that's what's going to happen is all of a sudden jerseys, you name it, like that, there would be more sellouts. There would be more people that want to lay eyes on this guy.
And around the world, right? Like in Japan, immediately the Blue Jays become probably the most popular team.
Yes.
Like that guy, he is a god in Japan.
Yes.
Like it is all Ohtani all the time. So,
I agree.
listen, they check boxes. It's just like if you're competing with the Dodgers, it's tough. Man, it's LA, it's California. The Dodgers are better. Their payroll is going to be higher. They've got a richer history. Like it's tough. It's tough to compete with the Dodgers. The Rangers just won the World Series. If the Braves are in, it's tough. But you put your best foot forward, and it'd be an incredible scene. I'm not bracing for it. I'm with you. Your Jerry's was 6%. I'm right down like 10% top.
Yeah, exactly.
But until it happens, the dream is going to be alive. Absolutely. Final hour coming up. Raptors in Brooklyn. We'll catch up with Frank Isola, get his take on that and other stories in the NBA. Leafs Panthers tonight. We'll tee that up and confirm or deny still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050, soon to be up on TSN 2.